Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pilera's little training webinars. These are short 10 to 15-minute long introductions to very specific applications within our Pilera software. We've been doing this for a few weeks now, so I'm going to show you guys in a little bit how to jump in and see our past webinars if you haven't seen those before. And you can expect within the next week or so to receive a new email in your inbox setting forth kind of the next training sessions we're going to be doing. Also, at the end of this webinar, there's going to be a little survey to perform just to see how we're doing. Just tell us, give us an excellent or poor rating based off what you feel these webinars are doing, as well as give us some tips if we're blabbering a little too much, if you don't like the topics that are covering, if you have specific topics you might be interested in, just fill out that survey and let us know how we can improve. So this week we are going to be covering email reply functionality. If you have any questions, if you raise your hand, we have somebody on that'll be able to answer your questions there. Or if you ask the questions, I might get to them at the end of this, depending on how long we go. Either way, we're going to get your questions answered. So let's jump into the webinar. So the first thing is, who am I? I did a webinar a few weeks ago. You may know me from some other places, but my name is Joseph McDonald. I started at Pilera a little less than 5 years ago, originally as a graphic designer, and I'm now a product manager. So a lot of the new features or functionality that are being released, I usually have some kind of involvement for. And I've also talked to quite a few of you just about how you think about what you think about the app, any improvements we can do, or maybe even giving you guys access to a beta or two on some of the features. So what is reply to? That's kind of an ambiguous name. It insinuates that you can reply to something. But what it allows is for managers that send out announcements, residents can respond to those announcements and managers can respond back and create a chain of communication. And this information can be displayed a little bit in the message center. Basically, it'll tell you if the resident replied or not. So why did we do this? Some of our older customers may remember there was a time when a manager and resident could just respond back and forth regularly without any kind of involvement in Pilera. One of the downsides to this was that there was no information in Pilera about the reply to or the conversation. But the main reason was in 2017, 2018, the email providers such as Google, Yahoo, AOL, they all became a lot stricter in what they accept as an acceptable email. I know back then I was receiving email from quite a few different marketing email providers, and you would see the giant yellow phishing attempt sign on it, basically saying, we can't confirm this email is a valid and safe email. The reason for this was kind of complicated, but essentially the email was being sent from a domain that wasn't associated with the email address. So if we sent something like a great marketing email from @pilera.com, but it was being sent from a marketing email platform that didn't have that domain associated with it, it would mark off sometimes, or only sometimes, but it would mark off it as a phishing attempt and that's something you don't want your customers seeing, that's something you don't want your residents seeing. We did not find that acceptable for our customer base, so we decided to do something about it. We also just wanted to, over time, improve the Pilera features and functionality and allow for some cool little interactions that we'll see a little bit later once we actually jump in the app. So some of the benefits, residents and managers can respond back and forth between the announcement. Pilera Message Center displays if a reply was originally made. And residents now know that this is a safe form of communication. There isn't a giant phishing sign or something like that, like what you might have seen if we hadn't made this change. What features are currently using the reply to? Currently, we have send announcement, send message, send event, send document, and package notifications. A resident can respond to any of these, and a manager will receive it, and the manager can respond back. Who are receiving these replies? It's currently the manager who sends the initial reply email, and then the resident who received that can reply back and back and forth and back and forth. And what does this kind of look like? So this might be a little confusing to some people, but we do have to send it from the Pilera domain. So what we do is we take the resident's name and tack on @reply-pilera.com to it. And we take the manager's name and then @reply-pilera.com at it. We also allow for some granularity and some nice customization there by allowing you to dictate what the manager email is a little bit more. We can state, you can add the community name or something like that, as long as it's the reply-pilera.com domain. And I'll show you how to customize your reply to name a little bit later. So what if a manager or resident unsubscribes from Pilera? We do honor subscriptions. So basically, with like any email service, they can refuse to receive communications from certain providers, so forth. That's just kind of the law. You have to follow that. So just like any other system, we are going to honor that. If they say we do not want to receive communications, if you try to reply to them, it would bounce back to you. Or if the resident tries to respond to a manager and the manager has unsubscribed from Pilera, it will bounce back to the resident. We have a few little safeguards in there that I'll explain. But for the most part, that's how it's going to work. That situation should really only ever occur if the manager doesn't listen to some things or decides to change their preferences after the replies are already happening and so forth. So you shouldn't really encounter this issue too much, but you might. So how does the magic work? I don't want to get in the nitty-gritty, the details, but it does help you to understand kind of how the system works. So when an email goes out, there is a little ID in the header of the email that dictates, tells us essentially what was the original thread this came from. And then when we associate that with the manager and the user emails that are part of the conversation, we can kind of figure out where the email happened. So if this basically means that when an email is sent out, the resident should be responding back to the original email because we need that header ID to match. It can be a little confusing, but 99% of the time, there's never an issue. This isn't something you should encounter really often, but we do have some managers who encounter it, so I wanted to let you know about that. So we're going to jump into the app. If you have any questions for now, feel free to keep asking them in the little Zoom chat. But if at any additional time after this webinar is done, you feel like you have more questions, you can feel free to reach out to support@pilera.com, and they will be happy to answer it as well. So let's jump into the app and I can show you kind of the details. I mentioned earlier that I was going to show you where you can find additional webinars. You can do that by, if you go under settings in the Pilera application, under Pilera resources, you can see it here, and then you can scroll down to Pilera tutorial videos. If you click on that, you'll be able to find a bunch of tutorial videos that can help you with the app in general. But we also mentioned upcoming webinars. You can see the current one here today. This is going to get filled up more as we plan out what the other webinars are going to be, but you can always come here and see what's upcoming. And you can also see past webinars that we did as well and go through those, get up to date on that, as well as just any other tutorial videos. So if you ever have any questions about like kind of what to do, you want to see some good resources, some good videos, remember to go to the Pilera resources page, tutorial videos. Okay. So jumping over. So I mentioned earlier that there is going to be times when, for instance, a manager is unsubscribed to Pilera. And I want to show you what that looks like when you try to send a message. So we're just going to try to send this message to Becky Hamster. I'm not going to type anything out because this is the important part. You'll see down here a big red box. Recipient will not be able to reply to this message because you do not have an email marked as preferred. So this is what I meant earlier by there's going to be times when managers are unsubscribed. If they are, we give them a warning. But it's not going to affect the resident too much because the resident is not going to see the option to reply in the sense of a small tip box. So in this case, a resident would not be able to reply to this email because there is no recipient to receive it because the manager has chose to receive no communications. So be aware of this if you have reply to turned on, just to make sure that you have it set right. So I'm going to now log out from this guy and go to one where the communication preference is marked as preferred, so we can do that. Okay, so going back to Becky Hamster, let's send a message. So if we scroll down now, you can see there is no big warning box anymore. The reply to switch is turned on. Just as a side note, if you choose, you can choose to have reply to turned on in your communities or off. If you have it turned on now and you want it turned off, reach out to support. If you don't have it turned on now and want it turned on, reach out to support@pilera.com. We can get that turned on for you. It's nothing special. We'll just do it. It's not like any kind of additional package or anything like that. So let's just create a test message, just test, fill out some test email. It's going to Becky. We're not scheduling it. This is not emergency, so we're not doing a forced 911 call or anything like that. Let's just mark email as only, preview and send. It's going to Becky Hamster, my fake inbox, and we're going to send. So this works just like any other communication. You can see it here where you get an update. I do have a sample down here that was a little bit earlier, and I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. So you can see here we have Becky Hamster, and I already replied to this one. So you can see the reply status. If you guys don't know, you can actually mouse over the status over here, and it'll give you all the different steps it's had. So you can see it was originally delivered, and then it was opened, and then it was replied to. So you can see the full life cycle of that communication. Let's see the status of this one now. So this one has been delivered. So let's jump over to my fake inbox. So we have a few different email communications here. This one was actually sent from the no reply, and I kind of want to show you what that looks like. So the first thing is it comes from a no reply inbox. And then the second thing is there's no tip down here that says you can respond to it. So if we jump over to one where you can respond to it, and this one I already responded to, you can see down here, it's got a nice little tip. You can respond to this Pilera Washington Park by replying to this email. It also has Pilera Washington Park at reply.pilera.com. So like I was saying earlier, you need that reply at pilera.com kind of scenario to happen. So if you do not receive that, there is a bounce. Like I said earlier, if for some reason a preference isn't marked, or if you don't have the switch turned on and a resident responds to an email, you do get a bounce. And what that looks like is this. You have replied to no reply at Pilera, which is an automated email. So the resident will know if they're not supposed to be responding to that inbox. And like I said earlier, that's based off the switches you have and if the manager has email marked as a preferred communication. So here we can see the email. This is the test email that was originally sent to Becky. So let's reply to this. Test back. And send. So while that's happening, I did mention earlier that I was going to show you how you can kind of customize the manager email. So you would do that through the email reply to settings. Let's jump over there. And as you noticed, when I was in the Becky Hamster email, it said Pilera Washington Park, not my name, which was Joseph McDonald. And that's because we have the from name here labeled as Pilera Washington Park. So if you want to only show the community name in the outgoing email, you can do that. Okay, so let's jump back to Message Center and see if we got that. So yep, you can see here, we got the replied. So now it was sent back to the manager and they were able to respond back. Okay, so that is the webinar, right under 15 minutes, just like we planned. I'm not seeing any questions yet, but if you guys have any, feel free to send them, like I mentioned earlier, to support@pilera.com. And at the end of this webinar, once I sign off, you're going to get a survey. Please fill that out. Let us know how we're doing, if we should be continuing this, and just any kind of tips or helpful advice we have. So thank you guys once again for attending, and I look forward to you joining our next training webinar in a few weeks. Have a great one, guys.